Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. I am Dylan Roberts. I'm on the professional services team here at Decisions, and I'll be hosting Lunch and Learn for you today. So feel free throughout this session, post questions in the Q&A, post in the chat. Happy to walk through different examples. And let me know if you want to see a demo of anything. So to start off, I see we do have one question. So I'll just read through it. I need to build a form validation rule such upon a submit button is clicked. I want to check the row of a username on a data repeater to see if it's been entered or the AD group name text box has been entered. Struggling with how to find the row of a data repeater has been entered. So let's go ahead and kind of set up the framework for this one. Might need some more clarifications once we get there, but let's go ahead and get a form with some text boxes on it within a data repeater. So I'm gonna go ahead and build this out real quick. Okay, for a flow. Now let's build a form. On this form, let's go ahead and let's just create a new one. So for this, we're gonna drop the data repeater onto here. Going to create a new source real quick. I'm gonna put some text boxes now. We're gonna put a let's expand this a little. It's not gonna be the prettiest thing in the world, but let's go here. I'm just gonna put let's just do basic first name. Let's go last name. Okay. Need to set an input type, and I believe I have a data type now. Created last time, Lunch and Learn data. Okay, so let's go and we're gonna say our first name. Actually, let me choose a different data type. Let's see. Lunch and Learn test data. That's perfect. This one has a first name. This one has a last name. Okay, so let's just go through. We set up a basic data repeater here. Going to put a submit button. Let's just put add a data repeater add button on here. Going to set up data. Our add button is going to be our data repeater add button. Let's just a little bigger. Okay, so let's just set up this framework real quick. Gonna go here. Let's pass nothing into here. Okay. So what we have now is just the framework around. So we have our basic form, and let's say we have some records in our data repeater now. So the next part is you would like to check upon the user submitting if one, let's say one of these two text boxes has been populated.
Yes,
Okay.
or a row count,
Mhm.
or the row count of the data repeater,
Okay.
because you can add, remove, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing, right?
Yep. So let's go ahead and look at that now. So let's go in and we're gonna add an active form flow here. And we're gonna say, let's call it real quick, run logic on submit. Let's see. Actually, that won't do it. Let me go here real quick. Let me see. Why did that button not show up in my active form flow? I could see we can run logic here, but we don't want to run that. We want to run logic. Okay, here it is. That's what I was looking for. Okay, run logic on submit. So we want this active form flow to trigger whenever the user hits this submit button. So let's go look in our flow now. So the data is actually going to be a little bit embedded in here. So within the active form flow, if we go to the data explorer, we will see form data is going to control the different components and the data within those different components on our form for us. So we'll see here, we have our data repeater component. So now within our data repeater component, we should have, or we will have, the item source. So this item source is now going to be the array of values from that data repeater. And we can go and test this real quick. So item source, let's say there's only one row or one item in that. This count of item source should be 1. The user had 2, count should be 2. But then to maybe run some validation on a specific piece, you'd have to maybe iterate through this list, and then you can check, do a check on certain values here. But just for this, let's, what is the best way to show something here without closing the form? Let me think on this real quick. I want to show a pop-up or something just so we can see the count change. Can I show a pop-up in active form flow? Let's just give that a shot. Okay, just gonna say count data repeater. And I'm going to put form data, data repeater, not add button, data repeater, item source count. So what we want to trigger here is just whenever I click some button, I want to see the count pop up just to show that that's the first step we can do to access this data. So let me make one small change. I don't want to run my submit button. I just want to run a generic action button, or what is the word I'm looking for? What type of buttons do we have? Event button. I don't want to submit it because I don't want to close the form, but I want to just raise an event, and that will be, let's just say, run active form flow real quick. Do one small modification to change this from running on submit, but we want to run right now just whenever I click that button. Let's save this. Now let's save this and debug it. Okay, so I want to add 2 rows into here. And now, yeah, count of data repeater is 2. If I go in and add a couple more, the count of the repeater is now 6. So yep, so within that now, within your active form flow, you should have the ability to access the data within each of those repeater items.
Right.
Yep. And that would be just again within form data. You'd see it under your data repeater section, and then item source. So there are some other things you can get out of the form data as well for your data repeater, such as the selected item. If you wanted to see if a user maybe clicked on the repeater line 4 and then they submitted it or hit the button, you could see which item was selected from there. You can get just the line number from that. And then you can also just some other things within the form control of enabling it, disabling it, or making it visible or not. But the main thing I think you want to look for is item source here.
Okay. I was using the legacy data validation, and in there you have a rule And a
Yeah.
rule, if it's a button or something, then you just say, or a radio button, then you just say
Mhm.
radio button is not null.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
no,
couldn't
the
do that with
legacy's
data read.
definitely, yeah, I would definitely recommend if you could move into the active form flow on that, but we could take a look at legacy
Okay.
real quick. Because there might be an option still for that. You said it was a validation rule.
Yes.
Okay, let's just take a look at it. Check data here. Maybe it'd be easier here if we just do it. Well, let's just see what it gives us in a rule.
Uh,
And maybe I want to do, okay, so yeah, yeah, it's been a while since I worked with the legacy. So you have to actually define your inputs on the rule. So let's just say we want to see if the data repeater count is greater than one. So this means there's more than one item in the repeater. So if I update my inputs, count should now be, yeah,
oh,
you don't have much
no.
here. You only have your selected item. Yeah.
Right.
What would be
Hmm.
another thing you could, if you were to continue with legacy, it might be, well, let me see real quick. What happens if you were to change your rule to take an array of your data type? Let me see. Luncheon. Let's see. Go to recently used ones. Luncheon learn test data. Let me just see. If I say, we'll just do count dot count. A little misleading there. If I update my input and I say now this is a list, does it let me select from a component? Oh, so you could possibly. So what I just did for my rule is I defined in my rule that I want to take in the input is just the entire array of the type that my data repeater is.
Mm,
So
okay.
I updated now the input to that rule to take in, I should have named that to something better. I named it count, but it's an array of my lunch and learn test data type. And I said the input types from component. So I want to pull from the lunch and learn data component on here, which is what I called my data repeater. So now what I want to see is if I apply, let me just put, I want to apply a thing and say data repeater is curious if this would actually work now. And I want to trigger on data repeater add or event. Actually, let's just trigger on event button click for this. Okay, save it. Let me make sure to turn this one off real quick. And then we can debug and see what happens. So if I run this, it ran my logic, said 0 is greater than, oh, it did. It set the validation and it said data repeater needs more than one value. Let's try it again. Data repeater still needs more than one. So if we add 2, okay, the validation's now gone. So you might be able to still leverage the legacy
Mm,
if
okay.
it fits your use case better. It's a little bit more work to use it, but it does seem that it's still available. Is there anything specific you want me to show you with it while we're kind of here?
Uh, no, that's fine. That's
Okay,
great. Thank you very much.
yeah, of course, no problem. Okay, so does anybody else have any specific questions or anything they'd like to see a demo of?
We have some hands raised. I saw Connor's hand raised first, so I'm gonna unmute
Okay.
you, Connor, and then I think Manal, I saw your hand as well. We'll get you next. So Connor, you're unmuted if you'd like. There you go.
Perfect. Yeah, hi. I'm having some issues with specifically. So I've got an API call to set the scene. That API call goes off to a third party, and the response we should get back is an Excel file.
Mhm.
But the issue I'm having, so when I debug my flow, I get a successful. It sort of connects successfully, and it's fine.
Yep.
But Decision says that it struggles to deserialize the XML.
Okay.
I've tested that in something called Postman. I don't know if you're familiar with it, and it downloads the file fine, so there's no issues there. But it's just unable to, as I said, just deserialize that XML, and
Yeah.
I've got no idea why. So I need to then use that XML, the Excel file later down the line.
Yeah. So let's see. So what is okay. I don't know if I've come across this before, but what is your type, input type to your, I guess API flow exposed as an API? Is it a file data
Yes, it's
or
file data.
file data? Okay. What happens if you change that to a byte array? I'm wondering if it's gonna look at file data as something different. And I don't think I explained that very well. So I don't know exactly how decisions deserializes the file data, but you could take the byte array and then your first step in your API is put that byte array into a file data um, object to work with downline. But let's test that theory.
Okay. For context as well, I'm using the post method.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we are sending a file to the third party.
Yeah.
They're going to manipulate it and then getting one back. So just a bit of context.
Okay. Let's just see. Yeah. Yeah, because if we let me just if I choose file data as my input. Let's just expose this as an API service. Let's view that service. Um, Let me just use a named session for this example. See now, what happens if we just test it through here? Okay, so file name, contents look to be, maybe that's base 64 encoded. Let me try to get a file in base 64 encoded real quick. Let me just test something. One second. Yep. Um, Gonna start with a basic text document. And want to encode that. Very ugly. It's a very small file, but then I'm going to use text.txt. If I run it, oh, I gave the user 1 second. Can I just use my current session for this? Okay, so this one didn't deserialize, but now let me try maybe with an XML file. So my theory of file data as an input doesn't work now because the file data, you just put your contents as the base 64 array, and file name would just be whatever your file name is. Let me see now. I have like a XML file I could test with. Okay. Just copy this. Change my test file real quick to be not a text. Put some XML in here. To this. One second. Oops. I don't know if this is how I wanted it. Let's see. Why does let's see. No, it's still running with this XML file. So I wonder why. It's not specific, it's not deserializing that file. So that's the response it's returning whenever you call it over API.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that's
it's specifically it says so the error message has got a response but couldn't deserialize into type, and it doesn't matter what type I have. I currently had it as a file data, said I just because I wanted it to be Excel, but it doesn't matter what I change that to. And then it goes into specifics and says there's data at the root level is invalid, line 1, position 1.
Hmm.
And I've copied the same, so the actual the content, I've copied that and then looked at creating like an XML data type based upon that.
Yeah.
And again, it still can't deserialize it to.
Okay. So it's breaking, it's taking the file, but it's breaking at your deserialized step. Got it. That's what is happening. Yeah, that is really strange. I don't know if we'll be able to solve it on this call. I might want to see if you could you might want to try to open a support ticket to look into it further to maybe help with the workflow piece with the deserialized step specifically. Because it sounds like that's where it's breaking, and if it won't even deserialize to like the XML type, yeah, I would take a look at that route if you could.
Okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I can do that.
Sorry, I couldn't been more help on
That's all right.
this.
No, it's worth a try anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, Connor, most likely if it says that a hex value at line 1 or something like that, it means that on the XML deserialized step, you need to change it to UTF-8 if it's in UTF-8.
Let's see. Deserialize.
Yeah, encoding, change that and it should work.
Good call out. Yeah.
Thanks. I'll try that. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. I see VT, you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to help Connor.
Gotcha.
I don't suppose you know what the XML type would be in that deserialized step if I change it to UTF-8.
Connor,
When did
it's going to be on your XML file. The should be in the first line when it says XML something. it would tell you the encoding of the XML file. Usually it's UDF-8.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, any other questions?
I had a quick question too.
Okay.
I had a question regarding the Saml. So we are going towards the Saml integration later this month. And with Saml, I built already a login flow and everything is set up. I just want to know, like, how does it get the new employees? So for example, like, so if somebody new signs in,
Yes.
is that when their accounts get created? How does that work?
Yeah, so with Saml specifically, it's upon that user logging in. So I think where like Active Directory, it can create ahead of time. SAML is only at login time for that user.
Got it. So for example, if there's a if there's an employee and I'm assigning the assignment to, and if their account is not even in decisions, how would that work?
That's a good question. Let me think on that real quick. So, because at that point in time, their account wouldn't exist, so you wouldn't be able to select them on the assignment.
And also
Hmm.
they won't get any email too, because it's just gonna be like, hey, you're not even in decisions.
Exactly. I feel like I've come across this before. Let me look real quick.
Thank you so much, because I was just doing it and I'm like, what happens to the new
Yeah,
employees?
no worries.
Now, you can use the schedule job to synchronize. It depends on how big your set of accounts is. Also, when they log in, you can check if they are in the specific groups that you would like them to be and just move them to that group. So when they log in, they will be placed to that group, or vice versa. If they are removed from some groups on the SAML side, then when they log in, you can move them from decisions group as well. But also, I think on the SAML group, on the SAML settings, you can pick which groups do you want to synchronize. So it
Mhm.
kind of runs the schedule job automatically. So you don't have to create that.
Got it, because right now we had a scheduled job that runs every night and brings all the new employees or updates their accounts. But I think I had a meeting with actual decision support and they said we have to shut it down. We can either have SEML enabled, or we can either have, because that job can collide with the SAML flow. So I can still do the job, which will just bring out the new accounts and update them. That would be separate, just to confirm.
I'm trying to remember. So, what did I do on the project? So, I think the way, I don't know if there's a single way to handle this scenario. But the way I think we accomplished this one time is that since the user didn't, I guess there was more of if the user didn't have an account when we wanted to go and assign it to them, we created the user an account for them. And at that time, it was a local account. But the only difference between a local account and a SAML account is really the authentication type. So there is a query you can run to switch that authentication type of the user. I don't know if that's the best approach to it. It's how we handled it one time specifically.
Got it, because we have like over 11,000 employees and people are
Yeah,
using it 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
yeah,
and their access is just to fill out the form. And we don't want like 10,000 support tickets be like, hey, make my account, create my account.
yeah, no, I completely see that.
Yeah, because my concern is just with I can get the new people and also so how would their accounts update too? Like for example, if somebody got married tomorrow, would their email address update automatically as soon as they log in?
I think that's all off of login because it pulls in that metadata from Saml.
Got it.
Yeah.
But just to create like I'm not sure if that's the right one. We like VT said, we have to create a job which will run
Mhm.
every night and that would bring the new people. So it's just kind of like adding in the corporate directory of decisions to make like
Mhm.
creating accounts. And then once they do log in, it would already be in there.
Yeah. I know, because that's how I thought Active Directory works, is where you could sync those groups, or
Mhm.
with Okta, you can also do that. But SAML, I thought was very specific. It was a different way, and it was only upon logging in where this happens. I could be wrong. This isn't my specialty on it.
Mhm.
I'm not. So sorry, I can't be more specific answers on it.
Yeah, no worries. I was just wondering if you have any like documentation or any example projects where you guys did like SAML and then somebody had to build like a job or something. Any
Yeah,
kind of
and
example? Mhm.
yeah, I think if you submit a support ticket, we can get that together for you and get a probably a project built or something sent over to you.
Okay.
Because I
That,
know we've come
mhm.
across it before, but I think it's a little bit more complex of a build out.
Got it. Thank you so much. I'll do that.
Yeah,
Appreciate your help, both of
no
yours.
worries. No
Thank you.
worries. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions? Oh, go ahead. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
All right, sweet. Can you show me how to delete duplicated data from a list?
duplicated data. Okay. So let's build a flow logic to do that. We don't have anything. There's, well, okay, so is it just a basic string list, or is it it's probably an object or a complex type, right? Yeah. Let me-
So users make a request, and let's say that the same request is made. I just don't want to. A mass email is going to be sent out, so I just don't want the same um request to be sent out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's just say we have a request type and we want to filter that request type to be distinct. We don't have a specific step to make that list distinct for us. We can build logic to it. Let me think on the best approach for it. So now if you were doing, if it was just a single list of strings, there is a get distinct list of strings from it. But that won't work if it's like a request object because that would only work for maybe one specific field on it. The way I would do this is let me just put fetch entities in here. Gonna just fetch this lunch and learn test data I have. Why did I need this? Oh, let me just lunch and learn test data. So let me make sure I know what this type is. Okay, so I got basically just the first name, last name on here. What I would do now is I'd loop through each of them. So me go here. For each record. Let me say for each entity result here. I want to do two things. First thing I want to do is I want to initialize a new list. I want to just say So want to create a new list that says just distinct list. Just here. I think it's much more test like that. So now what I'm going to say is for each record is the item in list. Actually, since it's not a string, we build a rule for it. Yeah, so what I would do here is for each item in that list, I would check to say, is this record in my new distinct list?
Mhm.
If it's not in the list, add it to the distinct list. If it is, go to the next record. So I would iterate through all of them and basically then build a distinct list from that. I don't think there's any other steps where that would get you around the iteration approach of going through each item in that list. I can build out the example more if you want. If this isn't.
But why not use just filter collection instead, where you can
So
build a rule?
you could build a rule collection filter step, and where you do that, so you'll still have to iterate through it. And in your rule collection approach, you would say for item 1, return, let's say all records that meet this criteria. Then if it's, what that would do is return you 2 things based on how you configured that. You could return matches or you could return non-matches from that. Let me just pull that out. Rule collection filter. So if we were to say in our rule collection filter, let me just put in my collection's just this array of it. My rule I would want to build is this item in the list. But then you're kind of still stuck with, you can return matches, you can return non-matches, and you can return both non-matches and non-matches. So it's kind of that same iterative approach. It's almost this is pretty much the same thought process of the lookup and rule, but you want to like add items to the new list or something like that, because you still have to go through and tell the rule collection filter, okay, now what is the type that I want to search for right now? I don't know if that was very clear how I phrased that. But rule collection filter would work, but you would still need to iterate through it because you would want to tell it which item are you checking for in the list. And then with your matches and non-matches, you can always just add, let's say you would still add to your new list, and you could say matches dot first, always add to that list.
Mhm.
Also, Dylan, if you're looking exact match, you can convert your object to something like hash or JSON and compare strings.
That's another approach. Yeah. So you could hash everything, and then you could do the string is in list approach. So you could do if you don't want to build a rule for your object, then you could do let me just hash step like, yeah, you could hash the object, you could build your input however you want, and then you could say, is this hash in the list? If not. So yep, that's definitely another approach to it. But I think all 3 approaches kind of lead to the same thing. You're going to want to iterate through that list and do some sort of check to see
Okay.
if it exists not, or if it exists yet or not.
Okay.
Okay. There any other questions or anything
Nope,
you
that's
want
all.
to cover? Okay, sounds good. Cool. Does anybody else have anything they want to cover? If not, I think we can call it a day here. Okay, well, thank you guys for joining. Hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, Robert.